Hello everybody and welcome back to Surge to Hit. Following up in the theme of our unit breakdown week, we are going over the next bounty hunter, Bossk, the Trandoshan Terror. And if you guys like the video, drop a like, comment any changes. If you guys disagree with any of our card picks on whether they're good, bad, or situational, let us know. And if you have any thoughts about Bossk in particular, let us know in the comments as well. And without further ado, let's jump straight into Bossk's unit card. Okay, so on screen right now, you guys can see Bossk's new command card. He is a merc, and you can tell this because he has the little credit symbol in the top left corner, and the what seems to be their now trademark dingy golden yellow that all the mercs have. So, starting off with which factions Bossk can be put into. As it stands right now, Bossk is Shadow Collective, Empire, and CIS. So you could potentially have a Grievous Bossk Dooku list, which could be pretty cool. Or, more importantly, I think, now the Separatists can run double bounty, Bossk and Bane. How that combo works out, well, time will tell. But let's continue. So far, Bossk has received a 10-point decrease. He went from 115 to 105. That's good. A point decrease is always nice. Keywords. He had his keywords changed around quite a bit. So he kept Bounty. He still has Enraged 3 and Regenerate 3. But he lost Expert Climber and Unhindered, instead gaining the best of both worlds and the overall better pick out of the three, Scale. Just overall better. Also, a key thing in the new mercenaries that have been released is he has the independent keyword. Specifically for him, he has independent Surge 2. So at the start of the activation phase, if you do not have an order token, you can gain 2 Surge tokens, which is like a pseudo-reliable 2 that you only get if you don't have an order token. Whether it's good or bad, I'll go over in the future, but let's move on. His upgrade slots. His upgrade slots remain the same. He has 2 train and 1 gear slot. His weapons also remain the same. Frenzy, melee, 1 red, 2 black, 1 white at Pierce 1. And his Ridley V10 mortar rifle, range 2 to 4, 1 red, 4 white, Pierce 1, and suppressive. He also has remained an operative. He is a trooper. He is classified as a trooper. He has 7 health, 2 courage. He has white defense dice. On his surge chart, he surges to crit, and he does not surge to defense with white dice, so only 1 in 6 chance of saving that defense roll. And then his speed remained the same at speed 2. Okay, so overall thoughts on Bossk's unit card by itself. Overall, not many changes, just losing Unhindered and Expert Climber in favor of Scale, which is great. He also gained Independent Surge 2, which, in my opinion, it adds to his defensive capability, but Bossk ideally wants to be played at range, as far away from enemy as he can be, while still being able to get his shots off, and while he's still able to remain relatively safe. So the Independent Surge 2 kind of serves as a fallback net in case Bossk is put out in the open without an order token for whatever reason or another. So I personally would have liked to see maybe the same treatment as Boba did, and instead of having just Surge 2, it could be Surge 2 or Aim or a Dodge, something like that. I think would have been better for Bossk, but he did get a 10-point decrease, so beggars can't be choosers. I certainly like that Bossk got a 10-point decrease. Besides that, everything stayed the same. I'm excited to see him in the CIS, that's for sure. But overall, he was good before, and he's just, in my opinion, even more solid now. So, let's get into the training upgrades and then the gear upgrades, and whether they're good, bad, or situational for Bossk. Okay, so training slots. He has 2 training slots, so it's not as competitive as the gear slot, but there are a lot of trainings out there. So, duck and cover. I would say that this is bad. Usually you don't want Bossk to incur any suppression for free. So I'd say duck and cover you really don't want to use. I'd say it's bad. Endurance. So endurance is a good way to mitigate your suppression intake, but I would say that overall it is bad, unfortunately, for Bossk in particular. Because you would hopefully don't want him being shot at a lot. And if he is shot at a lot, he can just enrage and he doesn't have to worry about suppression. Overall, endurance is bad. Next is Hunter. So Hunter, I think, is probably one of the best upgrades for any of the bounty hunters because usually that's good for going in against operatives and leaders. And well, he's got bounty to go against operatives and leaders. So I would say Hunter is a really good pick. Next is Into the Fray. Into the Fray I could see being useful if you did a melee version of Bossk, but however, personal opinion, I think Bossk is a little bit too fragile to be a one-man in your face against for melee. I think that overall, the best bet is you want him to be at range, but I do see there being potential builds with Into the Fray being in there. So I wouldn't say it's good, but I would say it's definitely situational. Next is Offensive Push. I would say this is situational on whether you want to use it in combination with this 2-pip or not to get that free, to take a wound, to take your free move action, pop Offensive Push, get your aim, and while you still have 2 more shots. So you have that aim to help out. I would say Offensive Push, situational. Overwatch. His gun's range 4, so if you have to stand by for someone for at range 3, you should probably just shoot him instead. I would say, unless it's a really a map that's heavy on line of sight blocking terrain, Overwatch would be good if it was heavy on it. But since most maps don't have a majority of it blocked off, as if it's like close quarters combat, like in the city type of stuff, I would say Overwatch is more than likely going to be bad for Bossk. Next up is Protector. Super easy. He doesn't have a Guardian. He doesn't get any benefits from it, so it's bad. Next up is Seize the Initiative. You might think it's gone down in its value, given the fact that there's an independent surge. However, having your order on Bossk and being able to control when he goes in a lot of different lists that rely on Bossk to be like that linchpin or to be a powerful unit on the board, you want order on him. So I would say Seize the Initiative is still very, very good on Bossk, even though you lose out on your defensive capabilities. Next up is Situational Awareness, and I would say usually Bossk isn't going to be spending his time dodging, so overall Situational Awareness is unfortunately bad for Bossk in my opinion. Next up is Tenacity. If you're going for a super hyper specific build where you want him to be a melee brawler for whatever reason, Tenacity can be in there. You could up his melee to 2 red, 2 black, and a white at Pierce 1 with Surge to crit. That's nothing to scoff at, that's for sure. So Tenacity is for sure situational. It's definitely not good, but situational. And last up is Up Close and Personal. You don't really want Bossk at range 2 of anybody, range 1 to 2 of anyone, unless you're going for that melee build, because in that case you could just double move. If you're at range 2, just double move into their face and charge them. So I'd say Up Close and Personal is going to be bad on Bossk overall, because he's usually just not going to be at that range, and if the enemy is at that range, either they did something really crazy, or unfortunately you made a slight misplay on that one. But I would say Up Close and Personal, 9 times out of 10, not useful. It's going to be a bad upgrade for Bossk. Moving on, we're going to go into the gear section. First up, Ascension Cables. It gives you scale. Bossk, this new Bossk already has scale, so it's bad. You don't need scale twice. Next up, Electro Binoculars. You don't want to be giving your aims out to other people. Bossk wants to hoard those, especially he wants to keep his actions to himself. Electro Binoculars is bad. Emergency Stems. You could effectively give Bossk 9 health on a turn, which is crazy. But, and this is a but, I would say it is situational, because most of the time you want a certain upgrade over it instead, because the gear slot, like I said, is hyper competitive because there's only one, there's really one upgrade that like outshines the rest in this category. Next up is a series, I would say this next series of cars are all kind of bad for Bossk. So in this series of bad cards, we have Environmental Gear. You gain Unhindered, so you can ignore difficult terrain. Scale gives you the ability to ignore difficult terrain. It's bad. Grappling Hooks give you Expert Climber. He doesn't need to roll dice when he clambers because he has Scale. It's bad. Portable Scanner, same logic as Electro Binoculars. You want to hoard your actions so you're stealth as Bossk. He's really selfish in that way. So you want to keep those actions on him and not pass them to other people. That's why Portable Scanner is also bad. Prepared Supplies. I honestly believe this one is bad just due to the fact that in the overall grand scheme of things, while canceling one hit might make the difference, most of the time it's not. And Bossk should be really staying behind cover. He should really be safe, whether he's being protected by Force users with Force Barrier or even Imperial Royal Guards with Guardian. That's where you want him to be, protected. So Prepared Supplies compared to the other options is also going to be bad. Next is Recon Intel. I believe Bossk could benefit from Recon Intel. But, and I hate to compare it to other cards because every card's good in its own respect on certain units, Recon Intel is just a bad choice because, and well, the last card we're going to be getting into, it outshines the rest. And that is Targeting Scopes. The best gear option you can put on Bossk, the only one I would say that is definitively good currently with all the cards we have available to us. Targeting Scopes. So he can reroll one additional die when he attacks. This is good because on his lying in wait turn, on any turn where he can attack a wounded mini, that's big because that free aim will allow you to reroll one additional white die, or if your red die blanks, then there you go. Because his mortar rifle has 1 red, which is great, but it's also got 4 white. In white, sometimes they work with you, sometimes they don't. If you're like me, your white dice only work for you when your red dice are all showing up blank, and then your white dice are all crits for whatever reason. That's how it always seems with me, at least. But I digress. Targeting Scopes is definitively the best gear option you have available to Bossk. With hands down, without a doubt, it's the best. While the only other thing that's like a very distant second place is Emergency Stims and it's situational. There's only one good option in my opinion. There's only one situational. The rest are negligible. They don't really add much to the overall build. But speaking of which, time to move on to the 2 different builds I have came up with Bossk that you could potentially fit into your armies if you so choose. Okay, so for the first build, I have titled this build for Bossk called Curveball, because it's just not what you would expect out of a Bossk build. So, it's Bossk, he has first upgrades, and wow, this is like, if you can make this work, I want to see this work so bad, because like on paper it should work, but in practice I feel like it would just never work. So Bossk for his upgrades has Into the Fray, Tenacity, and Emergency Stims. The whole premise of this is that he's gonna get in your face and melee you to death with his claws, which I think is absolutely hilarious, because if he goes against any Jedi, dead. I mean, I could just imagine Yoda would just be like 2 lightsaber attacks and he's just gone. But if you wanted to, if you're really set on having a melee focused Bossk, this would be the one. Into the Fray, so you can still gain surge tokens even on your turns that you get an order token. So like his 1 pip, 2 pip, or 3 pip, or any card that you give him an order specifically, he can still benefit because he can get the surge tokens for added defensive protection. Next is Tenacity. He's going to take wounds. White defense dice that don't surge. Yeah, he's going to take some wounds. Tenacity increases his melee threat. Next is Emergency Stims. Sometimes Bossk isn't going to make it to his target on time. This Regenerate keyword, I think it has a unique combination with Emergency Stims where you might die if you use the Emergency Stims on your next turn, but since it reads at the end of If you do, at the end of your next activation, discard each token on this card. But here's the thing, regenerate also reads at the end of your activation. So you can choose which order they go in since it's your unit. So you could potentially regenerate and still live, which is kind of insane to me. But, like I said, this is kind of the curveball pick, in my opinion. The Bossk curveball. Bossk with Into the Fray, Tenacity, and Emergency Stems. And now, onto the second, maybe more meta build. This is just the meta build. It's been his suggested loadout on Tabletop Admiral for as long as I have used the website for it. And it is, plain and simple, probably the best combo of upgrades you can have on Bossk. And heck, one of them you could cut for extra points. So, I'll show you what it is. On screen right now, you can see Bossk in all his glory. His first training upgrade is Hunter. This is a automatic include on any non-curveball Bossk builds. Because at range, and especially on his Reptilian Rampage turn, I believe it's called Reptilian Rampage, if he makes 2 attacks, he can potentially get 2 aims if he's targeting down, let's say, Han Solo, for example. If Han has a wound, then Bossk can be like, oh, that's cool, free aim. And then, oh, he has a wound next time, another free aim. Really convenient for him. Next up is Seize the Initiative. This is the one that you could probably cut, because if you need 5 points really badly in your list, well, there you go. Seize the Initiative. But it does give Bossk an order on turns where he desperately might need it. For example, the Wizard Lizard list really likes to have to control when Bossk gets to shoot. So, if you have Seize the Initiative, it makes that a lot easier, especially on Palpatine's 2-pip or 1-pip turn where you're not going to be giving Bossk an order on those turns. As well, on those turns, the only person that can receive an order is Palpatine himself. And finally, the best gear slot, the gear slot to rule them all, targeting scopes, to make sure your long-range attacks truly do pack a punch. And if you haven't seen what the Wizard Lizard can do, I'd suggest go to the 5th Trooper YouTube channel and go to their Adepticon videos. You can see Wizard Lizard in action, and it can be absolutely devastating when played right. And it was played pretty amazing that day during the video. But without further ado, overall, Bossk hasn't changed much. He went from being good to being even better, in my opinion. His independent surge, too, is a bit lackluster, but it's nice. And beggars can't be choosers, as I said before. And well, honestly, I wasn't really begging for any new updates to Bossk. He was the last one out of the 3, I'd say, personally. But his changes were needed. Scale definitely improves how Bossk will operate, because it just makes it easier to operate. And the independent surge, just overall good. I mean, those are the only 2 big changes on him, the scale and independent surge, and he can go into the Separatist. I'm really excited to see some Separatist builds with Bossk in them. So, without further ado, if you disagreed on any of my thoughts on the upgrade cards, or my thoughts on the new and improved Bossk, leave it in the comments down below. Also, if you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like, comment any other additional thoughts you had on Bossk, or even our next bounty hunter, Cad Bane. And finally, subscribe if you are enjoying our content. It really means a lot to us. And then, and truly, without further ado, I hope you all have a absolutely fantastic day. Goodbye, and peace.